It's just one?
Should be one of each. There should be two different things. One memo and one resolution.
Oh, this should just be good.
I have a few extras.
Just Gareth will sign that.
Yeah, I'll take them, I can mail some. I can mail them to Gareth and put them in the file.
You want these two?
Yeah, that's
Mark,
your-
Mark, while you're there, could you grab Greg's,
Oh,
no,
his agenda?
his name,
Oh, all right.
plate? No, I don't want it. Greg wants it.
I want? Yeah.
Gareth is out today, so
Oh.
I got to make trouble with it.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, 7:34. Ready? Okay. Good evening, this is the Town of Austin Planning Board for June 6, 2018. I'd like to ask the attendants here to just go around the board, go around the room and introduce ourselves.
Mark Closelake, planning board member.
Greg McWilliams, planning board chairman.
King Watchin, Chair.
Jim Bacinas, board member.
Nancy Arcia, consulting engineer of the planning board.
Sandy Anelli, planning board secretary.
David Stolman, town planning consultant.
Kathy Solantis, planning board attorney.
The first item on the agenda is the Rayford, Devon and Sons application for 52-1, 52-3 Old Albany Post Road architectural review. Is the applicant here? Okay, seeing none. Sandy, did they actually send anything for app?
No,
No,
and
okay.
they didn't respond to.
All right, so let's adjourn them then.
To a date certain.
Your date certain, shall we put, they didn't say any, they didn't give any particular date or reason why we're doing it?
No, I haven't heard anything.
Okay. Do I have a motion? Yeah, a motion to.
I'll make the motion to move it to the 20th.
Any
I'll
second?
second it.
Thank you. Any objections?
Nope.
Okay, the next item is Brian Contreras and Stephanie Giesen, 68A Summerstown Road, architectural review. The applicant's here?
Very good.
Okay. Just for a moment, however, could we go into an executive session? If we have a motion to go to executive session, there might be some issues on it.
For legal advice, for purposes
For
of
legal
legal
advice.
advice.
For this one?
Yeah, well, no, just beforehand.
I made a motion.
I'll second it.
Any objections? Okay. So we'll go into executive session for a moment? Okay,
Sure.
thank you. Okay, can I have a motion to come back into public session?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, no objections? We're back in public session. Okay, is the applicant for 68A Summerstown Road here?
Very good.
Okay. Where do we leave this at?
Well, there was a new submission, and we reviewed that new submission, and this is a continuation of the public hearing that was opened at the last meeting. So if the applicant has a presentation, that's fine. If there's no presentation, that's fine. And it would then be the public's turn to talk.
Applicant, do you have anything?
Yeah, just basically, we took all your recommendations from the last meeting and resubmitted them, so that was the additional screening of the trees, the additional notes on the site plan itself, which are on that lower right-hand section, as well as pointing out where the conservation easement was, and then we also submitted a lighting plan to outline which external lights we were gonna put in, with fixtures. And in bulb specs.
Okay, Mark, did you had a chance to see the lighting plan?
I looked at the lighting plan, yes, and I see the fixture that you presented, and I'm just bringing my blinding light meter that goes and shows from 7,000 Kelvin all the way down to 2,200 Kelvin. and I'm gonna close my eyes and just do it, I could shut the lights off there. All I'm asking for on the light fixture is that you keep it under 3,000 Kelvin, and that you, I think you show it
We submitted
as to.
2,700.
It's 2,700, which, I'm just gonna blind a few people, I apologize. Here's 7,000. Okay. Here's 22, notice it's yellow. You said 3,000?
2,700.
27 is right here. I'm fine, I think that's a great number, 27, it's under 3,000. It is helpful to in the environment, dealing with animals, neighbors, anything like that. It's under what's, it's a good color temperature. So if you just make sure it's written somewhere in something that's always gonna be that tight, and that you keep it on that section that's on the timer, I'm fine. I have no other elements. It just, I don't like the word incandescent or halogen bulb, as long as it's an LED version.
Yeah, the bulbs that we,
That,
they're all
yes.
LED
Yes.
compatible, so we use LEDs.
It's a screw-in bulb, yes.
Yep.
So that's the only thing that I had. I'd like to keep this here if possible for other future projects.
So you have the carrying back and forth?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
Nope.
Okay. Any comments from the public?
Yes, I represent the Fitzgerald Family Trust. My comments tonight are without prejudice to the objections that we've set forth in the proceeding that was commenced and how that might affect this application. But having said that, we appreciate the accommodations that the applicant has made. With respect to the 8 trees that they've set forth, we would only ask that they work with the Fitzgeralds in order to perhaps plant them on our client's properties. Probably would do a lot better. I don't think they have enough room really to put trees between the driveway and my client's property. So if they would be willing to plant those trees on my client's property, we could work that out in the future.
That shouldn't be a condition. That should not be a condition of the approval, because there's no reason to believe that there would be adequate cooperation to accomplish that.
We can't sort of leave it open-ended like that. Is there, I mean, does the applicant have a response to what is his?
We were responded to today in terms of that request to include the trees on their property, just this afternoon around 2:40. We had submitted to them what we were going to propose here back on May 24th. So obviously we did not update anything, but I think in regards to the 8 trees that we are showing in our plan, we definitely would, it's going to be our investment, we would keep them on our property.
So you're saying that these 8 trees that you're showing on the plan would get planted on your property?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, I mean, very obviously close to the
Which
property
is,
line.
which is fine. Whatever other arrangements they make is up to them entirely.
All right, I understand.
But
Okay.
we're approving a plan that
We're
shows the
approving
trees.
this plan.
With the trees on their property?
Right, so
Yes.
if they put it
Right.
somewhere else, they could not be.
Right, we might
they
not
would
get a
not be in
CO.
compliance with this plan.
You're going to comply with this plan?
Yes,
And then
absolutely.
do extra if you want to?
Correct.
Oh, extra trees.
I mean, that could be
They wanna
discussed,
pay
but
for
it's
it?
not.
Sure. But
Your
we're not paying to
request
plant
was
trees
to
on their
put,
property.
what is your request, to put those 8 trees on your property
Maybe
instead?
not all of them, but some of them in order to maximize the
Yeah, I just,
screening effectuated by those
But you
trees.
will be already getting a screening from the 8 trees
Correct.
already?
They're getting 8. They
Yes.
asked for
Right?
6, I believe, at the last meeting, or 4, but we're giving 8.
Okay.
Yeah, we maximized as many as we could in that back section there. On the initial approach of our driveway, unfortunately, we're not comfortable putting in trees at the time of building, just because like the sewer's there, the water line is there. Maybe in the future, as long as everything, stays streamlined and well, we'd put in additional trees down the line, but it's just not something I'd be comfortable doing, for this or to get the CO or.
I'm not suggesting that you put any trees on the adjoining property.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to understand whether you're committing to this.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the
Yes.
rest of what you do is entirely up to you guys. The planning board, the ARB has nothing to do with it.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Just one other comment, and I don't think this is what was intended, but in the lighting plan, it noted that there's a dusk to dawn setting where the photocell automatically turns the light on at dusk and turns the lights off at dawn. We could ask that they be either manually,
It can be set to 0%, which is what we would do for that dusk to dawn setting. But it's the dusk to dawn, what it does is if someone were to walk by during
It's
the
motion triggered,
dusk
so-
nighttime
Yeah.
period, then it would turn on to the full brightness.
just as
But
long-
we found fixtures that accommodate
Right.
either 0 to 50% in the dusk to dawn setting range.
Okay,
So that at least it's configurable.
Right, so all we're looking for is that they're not actually on from dusk to dawn. That sounds fine. So they either turn manually on or turned on manually.
Yes, the
Yes.
applicant is yes,
Agreed,
okay, that's
yep.
fine.
Totally
For
agree.
sure of that, okay. Any other comments from the public? Okay, hearing none. I understand we have a draft resolution on this matter?
Right, you may want to close the public hearing.
Okay, any motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public.
I'll second that.
Okay, any objections? Okay. Public hearing on this matter is now closed. We have a draft of the resolution before us. David, you want to talk about it?
Sure. Why don't I just walk through it with you? Is this working? No. It's supposed to be working.
Yeah, I think so.
That's what it is. Okay, so this is a resolution of Architectural Review Board approval. In the first whereas paragraph, the applicant and owner are identified, and the ARB approval would be for a single-family residence. In the second whereas, the tax map number and the address are given. In the third whereas, the application materials are specified. Fourth whereas, the fact that the planning board is familiar with the subject property and its surroundings and has reviewed the project in accordance with the standards for approval contained in Chapter 55 ARB of the Town Code. Next, in terms of seeker, this has been identified as a type 2 action, and therefore requires no further review to identify any potential adverse impacts. And then in the next whereas, the fact that the ARB held a public hearing on May 16 and June 6, 2018. Now therefore be it resolved that the ARB, taking into account the natural and man-made features of the site and its surroundings, and the character of the zoning districts and its peculiar suitability for particular purposes, with a view toward conserving existing values and encouraging the most appropriate use of land as stipulated in section 55(8)(a) of the ARB chapter of the Town Code, hereby finds that 1, the project will not be visually offensive or inappropriate because of the poor quality of exterior design. 2, the project will not constitute monotonous similarity or visual discord in relation to the site or its surroundings. 3, the project will not mar the appearance of the area or be detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. And 4, the project will not prevent inappropriate development and utilization of the site and adjacent lands. And be it further resolved that the project as shown on the above-mentioned documents and drawings is hereby granted ARB approval, subject to the following conditions and modifications and any other requirements which must be met by law. A, the following condition shall be fulfilled prior to the issuance of any certificate of occupancy for the project by the building inspector. The building inspector shall inform the planning board of the applicant's request for a certificate of occupancy, and the board reserves the right to make a field inspection of the site prior to the issuance of said certificate of occupancy and to require any reasonable modifications to landscaping, lighting, or other site details, provided the modifications are materially consistent with the approved plans and all other approvals/permits granted by the board and any other governmental agency which modification shall be a condition or conditions of said certificate of occupancy. And B, the following is a general condition which shall be fulfilled as the project progresses to completion. And this is just the stock payment of application review fees incurred. It does say that if such fees are not paid within this 30-day period of notification and an extension therefore has not been granted by the planning board, this resolution shall automatically be rendered null and void. And that's the extent of the resolution.
Okay. Any other comments from the front?
Is there, are you satisfied with what's in the lighting plan that's being approved, or did you want to add the language that Mark had suggested about, or is what you?
They're specifying.
They're specifying.
A number within his range.
Okay,
Yes, and within the range, yes.
okay.
The only thing we might want to specify is that the lights will not be on from dusk until dawn.
Unless if a person or
Right.
triggers,
The motion
yes,
filter.
trigger a car or a person. Yes.
Okay, Dan, do you have any comments?
No,
No.
I'm fine with this at this point.
Okay,
And one more thing, that the lights will be LED and not incandescent or whatever else is specified there.
okay, so that'll be inserted in the final.
Or halogen was the other word.
Right. No halogen.
Or incandescent, but will be LED under the Kelvin temperature we mentioned earlier.
Which is no higher than 3,000.
So we'll vote on it next
Yes,
meeting?
no,
This- this
no
meeting?
reason not to do it right now.
Okay,
You could approve it as we modified.
okay,
As
as modified.
As well.
I approve, I make a motion to approve.
Okay, and a second? Any objections? None? Okay, then the resolution's been passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a good night.
Good night.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is 593 North State Road. The site plan review. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Has the applicant seen a copy of the memorandum from?
Yes.
Sorry. Do you have?
No, you ready to go again?
Oh,
Okay, yes. Good evening, members of the board, Tom Kerrigan, Site Design Consultants. We received the previous memo from Dave Stolman. We addressed it not completely because there were a few items that upon addressing realized that we need to discuss. One of them being the replacement of trees. In attempting to meet the
They haven't read this yet,
oh,
so
okay.
if you'd like, I'll go over.
Okay, yeah.
And when we get to that point, he's read it, you haven't yet.
Oh, okay.
Shall I go through the memo?
Sure.
So if we turn to the top, or near the top of page 2. So to paraphrase here, we need to get the application form and the EAF and the plans consistent in terms of how the use is being identified. Have you submitted a revised application form or revised EAF?
No, we haven't. It was aware of the need.
Okay, so I think,
No, these are old ones.
Dan has experts, yeah.
These ones,
Oh, one
ones.
copy.
593?
This
No,
thing.
it's an extra.
Yeah.
David, do you have another copy of the June, your memo for this? There you go. Thank you.
Oh, no, I think he was set up over here.
That's, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We moved it
There were
back.
copies.
Page 2.
So the applicant is going to revise the application form and the EAF to be consistent with the site plan in terms of how the use is specified, which is 1,691 square feet of retail space and 1,691 square feet of office space. Item 2 on page 2, the Section 183-12G of the Tree Protection Chapter states, in connection with all subdivision and site plan applications, the project shall meet the minimum requirement of the replacement of 50% of the total aggregate diameter of trees proposed for removal with new trees in accordance with a plan for tree replacement. Tree replacement shall be required on-site unless the approving authority determines that because of site constraints, it is impractical or impossible to fully meet this mitigation requirement on-site. In such case, upon the establishment of a tree bank and/or a tree bank fund by resolution of the town board, the approving authority may consider the off-site mitigation of plantings in the tree bank or the payment of a fee to the tree bank to satisfy the unmet portion of the tree replacement requirement. Implementation of any off-site planting plan shall require prior approval by the town board. It appears that the 4 trees proposed for removal have a combined caliper of 88 inches. As a start, the sizes of the 7 trees proposed to be planted have not been but should be identified on the site plan. Further, the letter from Joseph Rena, P.E., dated May 30, 2018 states that we are willing to discuss this further to address this issue to the planning board's satisfaction. So the replacement would be roughly 44 inches of tree caliper.
Yeah, so, we were looking into meeting that. We started hitting issues that we felt would cause problems, that being that we didn't want to compromise the existing utilities on the site. The ideal planting areas for this would be, along the frontage of the wall, in the lawn area here. Coming through the lawn area, though, is the sewer main, which really limits it to this half of the lawn. And it seems that it may be not feasible to meet that requirement. I was looking to discuss the board what would be required with that the second half of the code and the establishment of the tree bank, and if we were to go down that road.
This is actually the first time this new provision of the tree chapter is being applied. So the town board has not ever established a tree bank fund, a tree bank or a tree bank fund. And they're the ones, as well as the planning board, who would have to be satisfied. How close do you think you can get to 44 inches of caliper?
I'm not sure.
That'd be like 44 1-inch trees, or 22 2-inch trees, or
I mean, I don't think we're
11 4-inch trees.
Yeah, the 11 4-inch would be the closest thing we could get to. I don't think we'd be getting, obviously, 44 1-inch trees on the plan. We could look into that. It was starting to become potentially visible. I wanted to see, prior to trying to shoehorn in all these trees, what that would require going the other way.
The other way,
Yeah.
David, you said they had 88, to the cutting down 88 and only putting up 44 or under 44?
I don't know what their proposal is because it's not identified on the plan.
Yeah, we haven't worked this out fully because of this. We would be required to replace at least 44 inches, and if all the trees shown were 4-inch caliper and we added an additional 4 trees, we would meet that requirement.
I think I would try to meet the requirement.
Okay.
Because you're sort of, no pun intended, blazing a new trail with the tree bank or the tree bank fund.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can possibly replace the 44 inches with, for example, 4 more 4-inch trees, you'd be there.
Yeah. Okay.
And your site is not that small.
No, but I mean, area available for planting is really limited to that.
We're looking for 4 more places.
Yeah, with 4 more trees we could do. I was thinking more in the line of the 48 or the 44 or the 22 other trees, but 4-inch trees we could fit, I think.
Is the area behind the proposed trash enclosure?
The majority of the area behind everything other than everything pretty much behind here is wooded and very steep.
The side yard?
The side yard, there is an existing tree canopy that reaches over the majority of that, so I think trees would have a hard time growing in that area. And it's also, I think that would be the main problem with that area.
What about, can I just point to this plan, what about this area over here?
That area is in between the back of the curb and the top of the wall. And some portions along that, planting a tree could make sense, but I think in other areas it wouldn't, the trees wouldn't be stable in their root structure. They wouldn't have a lot of room to grow, and you would have those trees would ultimately topple at some point in the future.
So I think it's the applicant's role now to go back and see if they can fit more trees. And to specify, well, actually, we're going to get into the nature of the trees, because you're proposing deciduous trees.
Yes, we took them specifically from the list. We did a couple of things. We matched the tree species on the site already, and we took it from the list provided by Mr. Hoflick. That's how we selected the trees. There weren't any evergreen trees on the site. I don't know if
Well, I think that
There's a preference.
we'll get into the nature of the trees in
Okay.
a moment or two, but I think the challenge is now to find places for them.
yes.
Okay. So if we could move on, the retaining wall detail states that the wall is proposed to be faced with New England fieldstone, flat and round wall stone. And the detail doesn't give a real good feel for what that's going to look like exactly. Since this wall may be a prominent feature and viewable from North State Road, the planning board may want to have a better visual representation of the proposed facing material. So do you have any samples that you could?
No, not with me. And if we use that detail because we had used it in the past in the town of Austining, but if it is preferred, we could use something like a Ready Rock wall. I'm not sure if this board has any preference to the wall material.
I mean, if it's been used before, a photograph would be fine.
It's currently under construction, so it hasn't been installed yet.
Okay, so if you could bring a photo, well, you can't bring a photo, but you can,
I could find a photograph of something
Yeah.
similar. Yeah, and like I said, something like a Ready Rock wall is more preferable. We could replace what we have on the detail with that.
I frankly.
I would rather have it be more natural.
Yeah, I like your first choice better.
Okay.
First choice sounds better.
What's a Ready Rock wall?
It's like a modular block wall.
Yeah.
It's a systemized.
Yeah.
Just the larger blocks.
Okay, a site distance plan was submitted and we're currently reviewing that. And then in the letter I mentioned before from Mr. Arena, it states that there will be no lighting on the site excepting the existing lighting on the building. And we question whether no lighting raises safety concerns with, for example, walking across a dark, snowy parking lot at 5 p.m. on a winter evening. So having no lighting of the driveway and the parking area whatsoever seems a bit impractical to us, and we recommend that the planning board discuss this.
So
I personally think that they should be on motion sensors. Someone who walks out of the building or enters the property in a car, the lights automatically turn on. Someone exits the building on any one of the exits of the building, the motion sensors turn the lights on. Again, it's next to residential environment. This is presently, right now, a residential house. I don't think it's fair for the other residents that nearby to have a light fixture that's gonna stay on all night long or anything like that, just like the previous applicant. It's gotta be a low Kelvin temperature, and they gotta be cognizant of the fact that it's next to residential housing. And you've gotta, even though it's turning from residential to commercial, they gotta treat it like a residential house dealing with lighting.
It's retail and office.
Retail.
So what happens?
It's not gonna be late at night. There aren't gonna be these lighting issues that's gonna be taking.
Yeah, but it could change very simply. You know, right now, it could be a plumbing store, it could be something else another day.
What happens if someone's out in the parking lot next to their car and they're doing something and then the lights go out?
The sensors to turn,
But the sensor's back by the house.
there's more than one light. So each one of those lights that they're proposing
Have
has
a
a
sensor.
sensor on it and they're activated, they're all daisy chained.
Okay.
If I may, the applicant intends to only be open from the hours of 8 AM to 5 PM. So in the winter months, it will be dark during those times, in summer months we would not. We were wondering if you would accept perhaps on the exterior of the building, some kind of light shining at the parking lot, but not necessarily post lighting that you would typically see.
There are residential houses nearby. Those residential houses do not have that. Just because this person is buying this property, turning it from a residential to a retail, whatever else, should not preclude them from being cognizant of what the neighbors have on their houses.
Well-
To have a light shine on a parking lot is, in my eyes, not acceptable.
I don't think anybody disagrees with you, but we're not shining the light up the hill, and there's a significant elevation difference between the residential neighborhood and where this building is currently set. I don't think this is really,
I think there's
Gonna
also
be an issue.
residential property to the right of it, north of it, or where.
as long as we're not shining the lights at the neighbor's house, this shouldn't be an issue.
They can be relatively low, human scale. They can be shielded and shining at the parking lot and not in the other direction. But I think we have to weigh safety for employees and customers. It's got to be in the balance, the safety.
Well, as long as it's motion censored in time, it shouldn't be as bad for the safety issue and still accommodate the fact that it's a residential area.
Right.
Will you?
So I think that some combination of Mark and Jim.
I mean, I think if we just simply state that the light fixtures can't be pointed at the neighbor's property, this is not gonna be an issue.
We're going to be looking for a lighting.
I'm fine with that,
and a
but
little-
again, on the timers and daisy chained and everything like that.
See,
And then
So,
obviously
okay,
cut
so
sheets
we're
of
talking
lights.
about, we're not talking about small light, we're talking about lighting the parking lot, but obviously on a timer and, motion censored, just post lighting, or
As long as
overhead.
it's not aimed towards the outside of the
I think
property.
it should be on relatively low poles, directed at the parking lot and nowhere else. And as they described, motion sensor, daisy chained.
I think the lighting should be no more than, like, cast a shadow no higher than 10 feet above the upper part of where the parking lot is.
We certainly don't want to
Yeah.
get more than a half a foot candle at the
Yes.
property line.
Yeah, okay, so photometric plan showing.
We need
at the
an
property
illumination
line.
contour plan,
Right.
yeah.
That would be nice.
And the fixtures and the locations and all that kind of stuff. And then we need that note, all lighting shown on this plan shall be directed and or shielded so as to preclude objectionable glare from being observable from adjoining streets and properties. And then there's some landscaping shown, the sizes are not shown, the locations are shown, and then there's a list of deciduous trees. 7 trees from a list of 6 deciduous trees. And in our last memo, we said the drawing should address the screening of the retaining wall and the parking area from North State Road and from the property to the north. And I don't think the deciduous trees that you're showing adequately do that.
No, yeah, it's understood. As I was, as mentioned before, we were in the process of addressing this, and we ran into the tree item, and we were concerned about that, so we sort of paused on that issue entirely. But we will address it for the next submission.
I think you need some coniferous vegetation
Okay.
to actually screen, because in the wintertime, the deciduous trees are not going to provide any screening.
So specifically,
Doesn't have to be a solid row of, conifers, but
okay, just my primary concern would be along this property line, having something here. There is not, there's not a lot of room between the plantings we would need to do to meet the tree requirement, and also have the screening you're describing. We could get it in front.
You can use arborvitae,
Okay.
which grows.
But is that on the
I don't know, Franklin. I don't have that list memorized, but
I don't have it memorized either. You'd have to just go by that.
there are
list.
conifers on there, so why don't you take a look? I'll take a
Okay.
look as well. And then we need this note, all vegetation shown on this plan shall be maintained in a healthy and vigorous growing condition throughout the duration of the proposed use of the site. All vegetation not so maintained shall be replaced with new comparable vegetation at the beginning of the next growing season. And then a location of a sign is shown. at the-
Yeah, we have a detail for the proposed sign. There will be no lighting on the sign. As I said, the business is only open from 8 AM to 5 PM, so it doesn't really make sense to have lighting on the sign. It's only open for that duration. But we have a detail with dimensions, materials. It's actually their existing sign. We have a photo of that, so you can get a good idea of what it will look like. It's a wood frame with a white typeface background and black lettering.
And then the last item we have is that the trash enclosure is proposed to be comprised of black vinyl chain link fence. And my comment is the planning board may prefer to have the enclosure constructed of an opaque material.
That could be accommodated with strips, black strips and the black chain link.
If-
They would visually prohibit, seeing into that and everything
If
else.
that's what you like. I personally would prefer some sort of, vinyl or wooden enclosure, but it's entirely up to you guys.
Does the board have any comments on that issue?
You are the ARB as well. This isn't an ARB approval, but
We're willing to do whichever.
So you'll consider an upgrade for that?
Yeah, if it be the wooden fence or just the vinyl slats, either one would be fine for this.
It's literally right at their entrance. It's in their best interest to shield it somehow because everyone's walking right past it. It's
Any further comments at this time?
I just have some procedural comments. So we got the information about the trees, and that implicates the tree protection provisions. We want to make sure that the application is referred to the EAC, if that hasn't been done already, because they'll need to weigh in. So I think the sooner we start that process, the better.
Okay, Sandy will take care of the sending of an official notice?
Yes.
Great. Mark, will you just follow up if necessary?
yes.
Okay.
And I just had a question from the applicant as to whether there are any other involved agencies in this, with respect to this application, or is there just the planning board that's issuing rules?
Just the planning board as far as I know, it's just, this is the, parking lot is the only aspect of this that I believe is requiring approvals.
and the GML.
And the GML.
Has this been sent to the county yet? Planning?
I will send it.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Can I ask a question? What happens if they go back a year from now, or 6 months, or 5 years from now, and say we want to expand the building?
They have to
Are
come
they
back here.
permitted to do that?
They have to come back here for site plan approval.
Whole new approval.
Okay.
Is it too early to ask for a public hearing at this point, or are we still working on these comments?
I think you don't have anything near for us to actually look at this point, do you?
Well, I would say that the majority of the comments that we have to address are not going to substantially change the site plan with the exception of perhaps the trees.
When do you think you'll have your responses completed?
Today is Wednesday, when's the next submission for the next planning board meeting?
Next meeting's on the 20th.
Yeah.
You'd be on the 11th.
We could have something submitted by then, addressing the majority of the comments. The only item, perhaps.
We can open it up
Sure.
at that point for a public hearing if you wish.
Okay.
The comments that we had last time have since been addressed.
All right, so we'll notice for a public hearing starting for the 20th, right? But that, of course, is whether it actually gets on the agenda is, of course, dependent on whether you finish your submissions. Any other comments at this time? Any comments from the public? None? Okay, we don't have any other actions on this, correct?
No, not for tonight.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Learning Experience Childcare Facility at 530 North State Road, site plan review. Applicant here?
Yes, absolutely.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Adam Wegstein from the law firm of Cochran, Tortorella and Wegstein, and I know it's our first time here, so we'll try to keep our initial presentation brief. But I'm also here with a representative, John Melchizedek, our architect and engineer, who will talk a little bit about the operational aspects of the center, and Jay Fain, our environmental consultant, who will talk about what's envisioned in terms of post-development conditions and dealing with the water course. What we're proposing for 530 North State Road is a child care center. It will be a one-story building, 10,000 square feet in area. The site itself is approximately an acre. Along with the building will be a 36-space parking lot, and to the rear or eastern portion of the property, a child play area with a pervious surface as a ground. The property is located in the GB district. The child care facilities and nursery schools are in fact permitted uses in the district. Historically, the site was used for a long time, I guess starting in the 70s, as a garden center, and more recently has really been used as an adjunct to the Bobcat dealer next door. And in fact, our client is the contract vendee for the property, for this lot, which is currently owned by the owners of the Bobcat dealer. The property, if you go and look at it, the surface is largely broken pavement, exposed dirt, packed earth. In its current condition with the three buildings that are there, which seem to be used predominantly for storage but are largely dormant, is not particularly attractive. If you look at it and you see the surface and the vegetation, it doesn't contribute much environmentally. I guess the only environmental feature that is worth mentioning is an intermittent stream that goes in back of and across the corner of the property. Jay Fain, our wetlands consultant, will speak about that in a minute. There is a minimal fringe of vegetation along that stream, but it's piped downstream of this into two 48-inch pipes, and at least one of the areas from which the water comes is also piped under the property before going into the water course. We believe that our proposal will improve the site both environmentally and aesthetically. It is, one of the other portions is currently there are two vehicular accesses, egresses and ingress, in relatively close proximity to the other. The plan would involve consolidating them into a single driveway, two-way driveway with ingress and egress, which I'm informed by our traffic consultant is a preferred practice. It creates less conflicts on North State Road. We are primarily zoning compliant. There are two issues that do come up, which after we finish our presentation, I would love to address with the board to get your guidance, which is number one, your code calls for generally a vegetated buffer along the 20 rear feet of a property that adjoins either residentially zoned or residentially used property. Because of the situation on this property and what we're proposing to do and the need for the playground, we would ask within your authority to instead, in addition to the plantings we're going to do there, to allow us to put in a solid fence, which you are allowed to do in your code under your discretion. The second issue will relate potentially to the signage, which I can address later or now if you want, but there is proposal for a wall sign, which is arguably too big for the site. It involves their logo, which is an elephant. This is a chain of 200 of these centers across the country, and it's part of their brand. It's part of there's a separate educational website that uses, actually, his or her name is Bubbles, I'm not sure which gender. They're the pillars at the front of the property, and I don't believe they're signs, but this is something we may need to address with the zoning board. Our they're little squares that are like building blocks, which are an A, B, C, D on one side and 1, 2, 3, 4 on the other. And then we're talking about a monument sign, which also exceeds them. So without further ado, I would love, when we're done, to just ask your guidance on a few of the procedural and substantive issues, to introduce Cheryl Schweiker, who will take you through a little bit of the operational details and show you some of the elevations and renders. Thank you.
We can put the pages up that you want.
Well, I don't
Oh,
believe
that
this
we
is in
don't
the
have.
package, so I figured I'd leave that one up for you. Okay, good evening. I'm Cheryl Schweiker, architect for Jarmel Keisel Architects. So I just wanted to give you a basic overview of the design of the building and some general operational, how the facility will operate. So the building is a single-story, 10,000 square foot building. The basic design is like more of a residential feel to it. It's got the fiber cement siding with brick and a shingle roof. And there's an outdoor play area that's fenced in. We have a rendering view of some of the play equipment that goes in that play area. The building will consist of classrooms with ages ranging from 6 weeks to 6 years. So the operational, how the daycare operates, it's a little bit different than a typical school. They don't all arrive at the same time in the morning. It's all predicated on the parents' daily schedule. So typically, they arrive over a course of time between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. And we find that the parents' drop-off time frame is about 5 to 6 minutes for the drop-off, because the parents have to park, walk their child in, check them in electronically with an attendance system, drop them off in the classroom, and then leave. So we find it's about 5 to 6 minutes. So the parking space can turn over multiple cars per hour based on this. And since the drop-off time is staggered, we find that there's really a backlog of traffic. The pickup pretty much varies throughout the day because some kids are half day. So pickups start as early as noon and last until they close at the end of the day. So there's, it's a little different in the afternoon than in the morning. We also find that a lot of the kids are coming with siblings, so you have one parent coming, dropping off 2 children. So again, that reduces some of the car traffic. Based on operations, that's kind of in a nutshell how they operate. If there's any questions, again, that's all I have.
When is the closing time for your facility?
6:30. 6:30 to 6:30.
I had a question about the plan.
Sure.
I realize all the classrooms located along the parking lot, they have exit doors, as per code. Do all the children in the morning, do they come through the central reception area?
Yes,
So they're checked in electronically?
So
you
what
said.
happens is, the parents enter through the main reception door. The second set of doors, you need a key fob or be buzzed in. It's a secure, kind of a secure entry system.
Right.
Is it a bulletproof type door? And
No.
are these other doors bulletproof? Or, we all, these things happen with schools.
Sure.
When I saw this plan, I saw the doors, and I saw a few with no knobs on it, which I hoped that on the outside it was like,
None of the doors are operable from the outside
Okay.
except inside the play area where they use the door from the building to access the play area. So once the child is basically in this second, in the school, they're in a secured environment.
They all come
And
through that.
They all come through that, they never leave the facility.
so the doors within the space are, God forbid, there's a fire or something else, or,
Everything has all the exit doors have panic hardware and they can exit that way.
and, but security-wise, those doors, if someone, God forbid, takes a gun and shoots the handle, whatever it is, or can they get in that way? And also, I looked at the size of your little windows, they're not that large. What type of glass are you using, or can that glass, I don't wanna say bulletproof glass, but I don't know what we do in schools nowadays, and when you see that toddlers and you look at the ages from 6 weeks to 6 years old, I don't think anyone in this town, we think this is I think it's a great idea. I'm just more concerned about the windows and security of people getting into that space and what panic elements are there, like people hiding somewhere or whatever else. I didn't see much of that besides the bathrooms.
Sure, I could get some documentation about operations specifically to that effect, if there's a lockdown drill, we could follow up with
I
that.
just want to know, like with the windows in those doors, whether or not they're complying with whatever New York State code there is for a school.
So we're
Because in
not-
a way, this is a school.
We are not regulated by the DOE. We are regulated under the state's child care licensing rules.
Okay. Kathy, I'm looking to you because I just want to make sure that these children are safe in the end of the day. I think it's a great idea to do something like this. It's a great need. I just am concerned about those elements, and somewhere on that plan, I want some ADA bathroom, whether it's for the teachers
So,
and
yes,
or a
there-
student. I
there-
couldn't see which
All
one
the
was.
all the bathrooms are designed to be barrier-free compliant.
Can you show these? I forgot to bring it, I was gonna bring the 2010 ADA compliant
Mhm.
code.
Mhm.
If on the next time you submit this drawing, SA 1.0, if you could just show the ADA, using the most current ADA code.
Yes, I can show the turning radius
The
if
turning
that's-
radius, whether it's the circle or
Yep.
the approach, and sometimes the door might have to swing the other way, yes.
Yeah, they're all compliant, and just so you know, the bathrooms that are in the classrooms, they all have the child-size fixtures.
Yeah, I
And then we
figured.
have two
Adult.
adult staff bathrooms.
And I'd also like to, down the road, I don't know if it's too early, I'd like to see where there are panic alarms and stuff like that.
So for fire alarm, we show everything for fire alarm compliant with the code. Again, we're regulated under the child care licensing. I personally have done maybe 20 centers in the state of New York, so we are designing within the child care licensing regulations.
I have a question about, I think right in front of the main entry doors, you really should possibly have an island, because you have continuous cars parked along there. And if a kid should escape his mother's hand or something, run out between cars, there's a potential of cars coming and going in both the lanes. And an island right in front of the doorway will give an open space with better visibility. It gives a point of entry, because you have people in the other side of the parking lot. They're gonna be getting out of the cars and filtering over through, and instead of walking between cars, they're walking in on a common path that says, you know.
Maybe you just get rid of the parking spot
We can
directly in front of the entrance, main
Sure,
entrance.
we can review that request and see how it would affect the parking layout.
Looks like you might, if you juggle them, you might, if you get rid of two of them.
Right, and from what I understand, there's no minimum parking requirement, a number of parking stalls required, so.
Well, there's no number specified, but.
Correct.
It's within the board's discretion.
Right.
Choose
Right,
an
so
appropriate.
you may want to
appropriate
provide
amount.
some ITE or other just parking information regarding, I mean, we've got these books at the office as well, but you want to make a case for number of parking spaces that you're actually proposing?
I'm sorry, in the report you were given, we didn't use ITE, but there was a survey done at a number of the learning experience centers in the New York metro area, and the experience is that they provide 2.48, the peak use of the property is 2.48 spaces per every 1,000 square feet. So the way it was thought of is that 26 would be the peak number of spaces used. Here, we're proposing 36. If you need, obviously, if we need more backup, we can provide that. But that has been, in the past, the best evidence that we've had, the past experience. And I should mention, I'm sorry, on the hours, and maybe it's self-apparent, it's closed on weekends.
Yes,
obviously,
yeah, no weekend activities, right?
Actually, I would be interested in seeing where that, you know, whichever you got that information from.
Which centers?
Yeah.
Yes, we will provide that.
But it would sound like you have enough, you have enough spaces to be able to create an island, for instance.
Yes, if the board is happy with the number of spaces, then yes, we can accommodate that. Any questions? We want to move on?
Oh, yes. If there are no other questions, if you just bear with us, I'd like Jay Fain from Fain Environmental Consultants just to briefly address the environmental conditions and in particular the water course at the rear.
Just one question about what type of distribution of the ages of the children you expect?
6 weeks to 6 years. There's a licensing chart on the floor plan that shows the age ranges for each classroom.
Okay. Ah, got it, all right, thanks.
Right, and it's all in compliance with the child care right licensing. So the facility can't operate until the state comes in and does their inspections and gives them their license. Okay, thank you.
Just
Thank you.
before Jay starts, and I don't pretend to know anything about traffic, but my understanding is that one of the ideas for drop-off and pickup was having that number of spaces along the front of the building, is that most of the time it would mean you could park there without going across any of the lanes of traffic and get access that way, since I know you would mention drop-off. And again, I don't purport to have traffic expertise.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Jay Fain, Jay Fain and Associates, 134 Round Hill Road, Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm the project environmental consultant. Just a little bit of my background. I'm a wetland scientist, a certified soil scientist, certified professional erosion control specialist, and also certified environmental restoration practitioner. I was asked to take a look at the site and evaluate the natural resources of the site. The wetland resource is located in this corner of the property. It's mostly off the site. There's a small area of the water course that does intrude into this corner of the site. As Adam said before, this is a site that's been worked over pretty hard. Water course originates from Ryder Park, but most of that has been already culverted, and it's culverted upstream on the other side of North State Road, across the site, and daylight right here in two 48-inch culverts. Immediately off the site right here, there's two 48-inch culverts, and it's piped all the way down to Blue Lantern Road. That's caused a lot of degradation to the wetland system. The primary function of the wetland system right now is stormwater conveyance. What we have here in the redevelopment of the site is an opportunity, a valuable opportunity to improve over the existing condition. And what our plan would be to restore to the best of our ability the riparian buffer zone that buffers this water course. Of course, we're confined to our site, but we would be able to extend some of it across the back of the site in this area here, even though this portion of the water course is off-site. And we're gonna do this in 3 different levels. We would have a planted buffer strip in this area here, approximately 10 feet wide. That area right now is just dirt. It erodes into the stream system. Whatever vegetation does exist there is mostly invasive species. So we would move with the invasive species and come in with the native plant palette that would act to improve water quality with the vegetative buffer strip. Beyond that, we're also going to have this pervious pavement area here. Again, that would allow water to infiltrate, stormwater to infiltrate, provide a second layer of water quality improvement before it enters this system here. The third layer we have is going to be an underground detention system that will collect all the water from the site, and that will act to not mitigate any peak runoff from the site, so we will not have any more peak runoff downstream. I won't say too much about that, it's the engineer purview, but I do want you to be aware of that. And that would also be outfitted with a proprietary water filter. So we're going to have a much greater improvement of water quality emanating from this 3-layer type system that is proposed for the site. I'm not going to say too much more. I just wanted to mention that we have a pretty thorough biological evaluation of this whole system. Includes land use history of the site going back about 40 years. It evaluates the wetland functions and describes the mitigation in some detail. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is the wetland buffer shown?
Yes.
Where's that line?
I'm not sure. I thought this might be an earlier version. It should be on another plan. I know we did put it on the site plan. Yeah,
It's on the
it's
site
site
plan, and I think it's on.
I apologize. I know we did, when we went through the last round of drawings, and made sure that we did include that. There's not going to be able to put them drawings in our own possession here. We have a screen.
Is that on drawing 5 and 11?
The existing conditions and the site utilities show that it's 50 feet.
Right on here.
I see it on 5 of 50.
Yeah.
5
And
of
we
11.
will, and we apologize if there's any oversight. We'll make sure that it does get reflected on all future plans.
What, I'm sorry, Jay, what scale is that drawing?
Point scale.
So 50 feet is 2.5 inches?
Yes.
So could you sort of just show us where it is roughly?
You want to show them here?
You want to use my highlighter?
It would probably, it's probably about here.
Okay.
And I apologize, we just printed this out again today. I don't know we added it to our plan. Make sure we get the right version. Any other questions?
It's not 100 foot.
Do you have a
This is
rough,
wetland.
do you just have a larger, smaller, I'm sorry, do you have a smaller scale of just the local streams nearby that area, just so that we have a reference point for the rest of the water flow? Is it
If you
in
take the aerial view and highlight
In the
that one.
report that I have, I did include aerial picture, aerials, and there's this aerial here. Again, the biological evaluation has some pretty good aerials in it. There's a site here. There's a couple of trees at the very edge of the site. When there was a nursery, I don't think they planted, there were a couple of trees that they never planted that grew in that. It's mostly a couple pines, I think it was a cherry and 2 red maples in that area along here. And then this area behind the site is pretty heavily wooded. This remains pretty heavily wooded.
Any other questions from staff at this time?
Not at this point. We haven't reviewed the package yet, which we'll do for the next planning review.
Okay.
I just had a-
Comments from?
I just
sorry.
had a quick question. So Adam, when you were saying the signs don't conform, does that mean that you would need to go to the zoning board?
Well, that was the question I was going to ask the board and you tonight. The signage is such that there are really three different issues. One is that the sign on the building itself, which is set back something like 80 feet from the road and doesn't face the road, it faces the parking lot, is higher, is taller than 2 feet, which is what is the limit in your code. And if you add the elephant in, it's higher than that. I can give you the exact figure that the board wants to know.
Do you have a detail of that?
We have, it's shown on here, we don't have a detail of that sign. We do have a detail of the monument
I
sign.
have a picture of it from another, one of the facilities that do.
We can,
Yes,
we
that would
can
be great.
absolutely do that.
Yeah,
The size of that is actually, the elephant is about 3.5 feet tall, and the lettering is roughly 7 feet tall, so it's fairly substantial there. Because of its location, because of its, we don't think it has an impact, we think it would be a very strong case for variance. The monument sign is a little under 40 square feet, and your code requires 20. If we were going for the wall sign, we'd presumably seek that as well. And then the final issue, which I don't know if you are comfortable interpreting or you're uncomfortable, I did speak to John Hamilton, who said, go talk to the planning board, is, if you can see, and I mentioned this before, these blocks, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, which are on the outside of the columns, are each 2 by 2, 2 feet by 2 feet. So whether those are a sign, I don't know under your code. I don't think they are, but the other 2 signs certainly would.
I mean, the building
summarily-
inspector is the one that has the
Yeah.
authority to interpret the code, the planning board doesn't, but I mean, I could circle back with John. But, I mean, I guess your argument is it's an architectural detail, right?
Well, certainly those blocks we think are, yes.
But the other 2 signs definitely don't conform to the zoning code,
That's correct.
so you would have to go to the zoning board?
We would, and one of the things I was going to ask the board, whether it's too premature to at least get us started on a referral to the zoning board on those 2 narrow issues. We don't need other relief, but we would certainly like to have that option to get that part of the process going. It's sort of separate from most of your site planning issues, assuming you don't say to us, we hate the signs, there's no way we're going to let it happen from an architectural point of view, because it's certainly within your purview.
Well, the board would usually, I'm sure would like to do in this case also a coordinated review. So you could always start the process whenever you want with the zoning board, but they really couldn't take an action until SECRA is completed. So it's really up to you when you want to start the process. I would
Understood.
ask that you revise the page 2 of the EAF to just also reflect that the zoning board, I guess, would be an involved agency. And then once that's revised, then at the next, I thought that's something we could do today, but probably at the next meeting, the board would declare notice of intent to be lead agency.
I would ask you to do that, and then we certainly can revise the EAF so that you have it and get it to staff, and we don't anticipate substantive changes for the purposes of circulating it. It would just involve,
You had said that they had.
it would just involve, essentially, as far as I know, New York State DEC, because we need the stormwater general permit for construction activities because of the area disturbance, and we would need the zoning board.
And do you need,
County
David?
Health Department approval.
I don't believe we do, but that's something we have to check on also.
It shouldn't be required other than anything they need to do for the cooking facilities. It's a simple sewer tap and water tap.
How about,
Actually, I guess the only thing you'll need is, you're gonna have sprinklers in there?
yes.
We will have
So
sprinklers.
you have to go to the health department for
That's correct.
the backflow prevention.
how about Village of Austin for water?
Or will need a permit from the village?
Village of Austin for your water supply.
Even though it's an existing building with an existing connection.
Well, it's an intact, it'll be doing.
It's an existing building?
Yes.
It's an old garden center, used to be,
Are you renovating one of their existing buildings?
no.
We are not. It is being, there are 3 buildings on that site, they're all being demolished.
I assume nothing has
so
a
it's a new
4-inch
building.
tap?
It is a new building, but it's in a location where we could use it. If we need to go to the Village of Austin, we'll do it, and we would certainly prefer, even if we haven't resolved that issue, to put them on the list of involved agencies to get that aspect of it done.
And that would probably also deal with obviously, I forgot the quantity of the children, but also dealing with the waste of sewer.
Yeah,
I went tying it into that and checking to see whether or not it's on West State Road, whether or not it's probably capable, but
Yeah.
that's something
part of
that's
the-
gonna,
they'll
Dan's
do a
gonna have to
sewer
look
permit,
at.
and they can address it in the environmental review.
And then what about, is there another state agency, like the Department of Health that gives
We
the
will
approval?
need the license from the Department of Health for the actual activities.
So
New
they're
York
an
State
involved
is-
agency?
So it's New York State child care licensing, and they come in after a C of O has been issued.
Just in terms of secret, they're an involved agency as well, right?
If they have an approval,
Right.
they would be.
So we
Which they
should
do.
add that.
Right. So,
Right, so they come after the project is completed, the state licensing, yeah.
right, so basically what Kathy's getting at is in order to do this designation of lead agency procedure, we need to know all of the agencies
Okay.
which have a permit or an approval to grant. And that would be good to be in your EAF.
So we want to reflect the zoning board, the Village of Austin, and Department of Health is the agency?
For licensing?
Yeah,
No,
or child.
it's the state, I
Yes,
forget the
Okay,
exact
whatever that
name.
state agency
Yeah,
is, that
Department of
should
Children or.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll,
Okay.
we'll put the correct name in.
And we certainly could get you the revised EAF with the full list within the next day or two.
Hey, could you double check to see about sidewalks on North State Road also?
In what respect, in terms of getting the approval?
I don't see sidewalks on any of this, for people walking. I know there's sidewalks on the other side, I don't know.
But there are sidewalks on that side, and actually, where the driveway is coming out, your site plan shows gaps in the sidewalks, so obviously what's gonna have to.
So where
be
some of
connected.
that greenery is, you have actual sidewalks, so yeah, you have to incorporate that. Sometimes we use that street as a village fair or a town fair, and people walk on the sidewalks there.
And that's something, obviously you're not committing yourself to anything, but that's something the board would like to see along that.
Yes, generally having having a continuous sidewalk would be helpful.
Your survey does show that there's sidewalks on either side of the site, so.
Because right now, with the garden center, with the garden center, it all got mishmashed over 40 years, yes.
They did, and then in the 2 curb cuts.
And having it as a Bobcat place is just this, like, a storage unit.
I guess I should point out too, as the site plan does show the wetlands buffer, but it's depicted at 50 feet.
We believe the water course, it's the water course buffer that applies here. We don't
Right.
think there's anything
Wetland.
appreciable.
The term wetland includes water courses, but there's a specific buffer specified for water courses, which is 50 feet.
And that will be put on all the plans. It is on some of them.
Yeah. It's being blotted out by some of the hatching. It goes through the building, but the building hatch blocks it out. Has that pipe been inspected, the 48-inch pipe? Is it okay? Or should it?
Has not been inspected at this
Okay.
point.
Yeah, I think that's something that should be looked at before we put a new parking lot over it.
You're talking about on site where we're doing
Right,
it.
the 48-inch pipe.
When you say that, are you talking video? Video inspection?
It's 48 inch, I mean, I suppose somebody could walk through it. And related to that, there's sort of like a hole where the culvert that conveys the water course under North State Road doesn't directly connect to the beginning of the 48-inch pipe, so you sort of have this hole there. So, want to make, right now there's some bollards and guide rail. All I saw on the plans was there's some planting, so obviously we want to see that that's protected and make sure that the new grading for the parking lot works with the big hole that's sitting over there.
Dan, is the area you're talking about in the right of way, or is it on our
I
property?
think it straddles.
Okay. It straddles.
Could I also ask that you consider possibly some solar panels or something on there? I don't know whether there's that solar building down the street, that Solar Solutions, whatever it is. If you just look into something in there, whether or not, I don't know if we're allowed to ask that as a planning board, but you're creating a building that is gonna generate electricity, generate a need for electricity and heating and everything else.
You could certainly discuss green infrastructure.
You are going to sit, and you are sitting as the ARB on this as well, because it's a
Right.
new building, new commercial building. So you can certainly ask.
Right.
Whether you can tell is a different story.
And I will convey the request to my client.
To your earlier question, Adam, that transition probably is about 3/4 on your client's property. And it appears from the existing conditions, it's protected with bollards and a fence.
I'm not sure, I didn't hear the first part of what you said, I apologize.
So your question was whether that
I'm sorry.
opening I was
I
talking
got
to,
it.
whether it was in the right of way or not. It's
Now I
like
understand.
3/4 on your client's property. But it's protected by bollards and a fence right now. So from what I can tell from the plans, I don't see any treatment of that other than some landscaping around it. Especially with kids running around, it's something that should be protected.
Just to, and I won't belabor this, just to get back procedurally, is it premature at this point, if we get you the revised list of involved agencies, to just circulate your notice of intent? We would hope you could do that. I don't know also what you can do as far as referrals. Obviously, we would love your consultants to review this, your in-house consultants, Dan and David, and get their memos. And I don't know at what point you typically make your referral to your environmental advisory council and/or the county.
So we'd like to do that as soon as possible. I guess we would like.
We would love it sooner rather than later.
We would
as
like
well.
to get your revised plans that correctly delineate the wetland before. I think we should have those revised plans before it's sent to EAC. And
And
then,
we could get these color drawings in PDF format also to give to the EAC also.
and we usually like to do notice of intent to be lead agency as soon as possible too, but.
Lead what,
I
I'm
mean,
sorry?
To declare notice of intent to be lead agency, to do that as soon as possible, but I don't know if you're comfortable with, I mean, so right now we're waiting for, we should circulate the most revised plans that have the wetlands buffer delineated, to the, I mean, that would make the most sense, so I don't know if we're getting ahead of ourselves, right, to.
Well, I think the planning board can declare its intent to be a lead agency, but we can't send anything out until we have an accurate EAF, full EAF, and an accurate set of plans.
I mean, so if the planning board's
I'm not saying
comfortable.
these plans are inaccurate, but it would be good to have the wetland buffer, or the water course buffer shown on the drawing of what you're proposing to build.
It looks like part of the 50 feet, part of the building is over the 50-foot. If I see where it's starting on one side, it goes underneath it, and what you have to do to the environmental guy over there, if he has to figure out what to do to make that code compliant and dealing with all the water courses, because you're putting a building that's one story, no basement or anything like that, but if the water course, if it gets flooded, I don't want those children to be trapped in a building and can't get out because of that, the part that's within the 50 feet.
I mean, we will address that. My understanding is that that's a very defined water course. This isn't
Right.
an area that's a floodplain where the water rises up. You're probably all familiar with it, but if you go out and look, you can see how it's set up. But again, our consultant will address it.
Were any studies done for the site plan to conform with the rear yard landscape buffer?
We looked at it in-house, our engineers looked at it, and the architects, and the conclusion was it really couldn't be done with the program that was involved here. There needed to be a place for the play area that connected to the building. You needed the parking to be sufficient, and with the
And
building
where do we
size-
stand, where do we stand with the parking spaces?
There were
Could we lose any?
36, there are 36 shown on there right
And the
now.
requirement for the site would be?
The requirement for the site is what you decide it to be. Our studies at the other centers show that the peak demand is 26 spaces. That's been the experience.
I mean, I can't speak for the other board members, but given the fact that we have wetlands in the rear, we have residential homes behind that, I would kind of like to see conforming buffer. And I don't speak.
I don't think you
I
can do it
can't-
with the playground.
I can't speak for the other board member, but I think he's gonna be more adamant about it than I am.
All I will tell you is I think there are probably, based on experience, programmatic reasons for this many spaces. This is unusual for me. I'm always getting pushed to provide more spaces.
I understand, but if I was living in the back, and I'm sure if you were living in the back, you'd be looking for that buffer as well.
If as you said earlier, it's mostly people dropping off the children in the morning and picking them up at night, and the quantity of teachers or people that you have to have obviously enough parking for them, and some of the people might take mass transportation there. Gareth and everyone else probably will probably move the playground closer or add more trees to buffer.
Let's not speak for Garrett,
I'm not- yeah.
but we can take a guess
Yes.
that he'll be concerned as well.
Jim, just to clarify the record, you're talking about the buffer adjacent to a residential zone as
Yes.
opposed to the water course buffer?
Yes.
I'd urge you just, if you haven't been out to the site, to go out and
I
walk
live-
around.
we live-
Oh, you
we
live
live
near,
right
okay, and I
nearby.
apologize. 'Cause
And
it's
frankly,
pretty
I
well-
want to hear from the neighbors behind that place as I'm walking around town.
I'm sure we will hear from them.
Thank you.
I will bring that up to the
Appreciate it.
client. I know there were reasons why that wasn't done, but I will take back your comment, obviously.
And perhaps to address your comment, Greg, and preserve spaces, maybe one way to do that is to move the handicap so that the handicap aisle is centered on the building or thereabouts. So you really, chance of having two handicapped vehicles plus plus you'd have the striped island. You generally have the front of the building open most of the time.
But you're talking about an actual paved pedestrian area.
Yeah, a break in the parking area.
Right.
Right, so
Something that people can traverse, whether it's
Well-
raised with drop curves or.
Yeah,
flush.
I think-
It becomes an efficient way, that if you do the walkway, that it lines up with the center of the building and the striped area, the crosshatch area for the handicap parking.
With all due respect to yours, I think something wider and like Greg is talking about is preferable.
So typically we offset the handicap parking away from the front because the signage for the handicap parking becomes a conflict with those building blocks, those structural columns for the canopy become a conflict. So that's why we offset it.
So if planning board likes, it could, tonight declare notice of intent to be lead agency.
I think we could start the ball rolling with
Yeah,
this,
with the-
just so the applicant has some maneuverability there. But obviously, yes, we're gonna be looking forward to something more complete in terms of responsive to our comments today.
Understood.
With the understanding that we would circulate to interested and involved agencies once you submit the revised EAF, the revised plans.
Right, and to your satisfaction, indeed.
Right, and the board will kick this out to Dan and me tonight.
Good. We thank you for that. Is there anything else?
And also, we should refer to the EAC, get them involved in the process as early as possible.
And the county plan.
Sandy, we just
And
make sure
refer-
the ANC get a copy of this?
Once it's
Of the
revised,
news
of the
Of the
new,
new,
yeah.
yeah. Well, you could also give them a heads up with the old one if you want.
And for the
Okay.
county planning.
Just so they're-
But we're not, it's gone.
I couldn't make
Okay.
Monday's
So
meeting.
we went already.
That's
Sorry.
So for the revisions for the referral set, are we just talking about making sure the buffer is clear on all the plans and adding the color rendering to the PDF version?
If
Or
you're
do you
gonna-
want us to get your comments first? How? We know this is going to be evolving, but the basic concept isn't.
Yeah. I mean, it would be more efficient for the applicant if the applicant waited for my comments and for Dan's comments before revising the plans and submitting new paper in the.
We
so
kill
we'll-
enough trees as it is.
We'll have our comments for the 20th, for the next planning board meeting.
Well, that would be
Or
great.
I'll have mine.
Yeah. we'll do it
Dan will
like
probably
this.
have his sooner.
Are there any other comments on the board?
So just the revised EAF to circulate to interested and involved agencies, that's the only thing?
We will get
Is
that
that,
here.
is that?
Sure.
Okay.
So we basically look forward to something responsive to by the next meeting.
Well, no, we're gonna submit comments for the next meeting, and then they'll revise the plans.
Okay.
Instead of revising them between now and the next meeting, and then they get a whole new set of
Right.
comments.
So I take it that means we should not appear, but just get your memos and get you a response for the following meeting with revised plans? Or would you like us here to discuss? Because we're happy to do either. If the board would like us to discuss the memos, that would be
I-
fine.
you know, We're gonna go over the comments, so.
Then we will be here. Thank you very much for everyone's courtesy and patience.
And
So,
by the way,
the board-
the letters, you said the size, this is how the letters look on that sign? This is the non-compliant sign?
You're talking about the building blocks?
The building.
Not the building blocks, the big sign
Oh, that's an internally lit LED strip.
like this, shaped like this.
Almost exactly like that, yep.
Okay.
And the colors that you can see on here are the colors they'll be,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So you may just want to do a motion to declare yourself as, you know, to, your intention to be
Okay.
lead agency and to direct circulation of notice of intent upon
Any,
receipt of the revised EAF.
Motion for that, with that intent? Greg, seconds? Any objections? No. Great. Okay,
Thank you again.
thank you. Next item on the agenda is Santucci Insurance subdivision, 37 and 41 Cobham Road subdivision. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
You can actually review over the keyboard and the mouse. Put it on the table. I think it'll work.
We don't have a memo on this, right, Dan? Dan?
Again, for the next meeting, we'll have a review.
So, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for letting us present tonight. My name is Matt Steinberg. I'm with the firm Divney Tung Schwalbe in White Plains. We're the planners, engineers, and landscape architects for this project. I'm here on behalf of the Schemmers and the Santucci's, who are the current owners of the property and the applicants for tonight's the subdivision. Just to orient you, this was not in the package, but we added this graphic. The property is located on the west side of Croton Dam Road, just north of Cherry Hill Circle. Or you can see we've rotated it so that Croton Dam Road is sort of planned south. It's just northwest of the village town border, generally surrounded by other single-family residences. The former Stony Lodge Hospital is opposite the site, sort of to the northeast. The property itself is comprised of 2 parcels, approximately 5 acres in size. The southern parcel, the one on the left of the plan, 37 Croton Dam Road, is a little over 2 acres.
I apologize, could you just tell me which way the Stony Lodge Hospital is? River Knoll or?
Sure, so it's across the street right here where the cursor is.
Okay.
This is the front of that property.
Okay.
It doesn't extend the entire distance, it's about here.
Right, thank you.
The property on the left side has currently 2 single-family residences on 1 parcel. It's a pre-existing condition. The driveway is a shared driveway. It's a little hard to see because of the tree cover, but it kind of goes up here. If anyone's driven down that road, you'll see like a stone, sort of a stone wall. It goes up, kind of curves back on itself, and then ends in this circle in front of the residences. The site, the topography, there's a low point in the corner of the property of about 322, and it rises to a high point of about 386. It's connected to public water and sewer. Over in this portion of the property, it comes from the other cul-de-sac. The property to the north, 41 Croton Dam Road, is a little under 2 acres. It's got a low point of about 328 in this corner, 406 up in this corner. It's currently vacant other than a small animal hutch in the corner of the property. The applicant proposes to subdivide the property from 2 lots to create 4 lots. The existing property line, you can see here in this pink, would be vacated. The lots on the south, which are generally the 37 Croton Dam Road parcel, would be divided so that each of the single-family homes would now be on their own properties. The 41 Croton Dam Road would then be divided, generally it kind of crosses the line, into 2 additional lots. We've prepared a preliminary layout plan. The lots 1 and 2, which are the existing, comprise the existing residences, would continue to share the existing driveway. Cross easements would be provided as necessary so that each lot has appropriate access. Lots 3 and 4, which are the new subdivided lots, would also have a new shared driveway. So although it's 4 lots being created, because there's already 2 existing homes, there are 2 new homes being proposed as part of the 4 lots. The new driveway where it approaches Croton Dam Road starts at a limited, no more than 2% slope. From there, it does start to increase in slope. It doesn't exceed 14% along the run of the driveway. When it reaches each single-family residence, it begins to level back out where it approaches the garages. At Croton Dam Road, the stopping site distance from the north and the south exceeds 400 feet. It's interesting that you had a discussion about trees on an earlier item. We've actually found ourselves in a very similar predicament as the earlier application. As part of this project, I'll just go back quickly, there's a number of trees sort of in the center of the 41 Croton Dam Road, the lots 3 and 4 that would be removed. In total, it's approximately 100 trees that would be removed. Just because of that number, even though a lot of them are not, they don't exceed 20 or so inches, they add up. And we are proposing to replace it with 133 trees that would supplement the existing trees that we are trying to maintain. This would be a mix of deciduous, evergreens, and ornamental trees to provide both visual interest on the site, along with screening between the different properties and to the properties surrounding the project. A full SWIP has been prepared. It was in the package. We're proposing erosion sedimentation controls that would be maintained throughout construction. And following construction, the permanent measures would be installed. Driveway runoff would be directed to swales and then infiltration basins. Roof runoff would be directed to roof leaders and then conveyed to rain gardens. The 2 new lots would be connected to sewer and water that would tap off of the existing connection on the sort of the northwest side of what's going to become lot 1. So the existing water and sewer main on that side. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the board or staff may have.
This is the one property I didn't get a chance to look at in detail, so at this time I don't have that much comments.
I had a question about the EAF.
Mm-hmm.
So you have subdivision approval, so I guess steep slope, tree protection permit, so that's all the planning board.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other local agencies should reflect EAC as a referral. Are they gonna need Westchester County Health Department
Yes.
approval? Yeah, so that should be for a county agency. It looks like you're creating another curb cut, so would that be New York State DOT? It's-
So actually, we realized that 134, this section of the road is not New York State Route 134. So this would be a local road. We'll confirm
Okay,
whether or not
Right, 134 is Hawks over there,
okay.
so yeah, this.
right, this section was a mistake.
So that approval comes from,
From the local highway superintendent.
okay, so that should be reflected too, under the local. What about the village of Ossining with the water? Is that the same?
Okay.
And also the sewer, I mean, all this with the property across the street, I don't wanna get them mixed together, but whether or not that goes forward or not,
This one goes the other way.
it goes the other way, yes.
Is that village of Ossining again for sewer?
No,
Okay.
just the county.
Just the county.
We will update the EAF.
You're showing on drawing SP 0-0, 20-foot, I guess it's proposed water and sanitary sewer easement, is that's what that is? the 20
Correct,
foot?
right, similar to the, to let's say the driveways, the easements, since they will cross over various properties in order to reach these, they'll have to have sewer easements granted in order to conveyed across those properties. So that was something that'll have to be memorialized. Similarly, the
One and
driveway.
two are already hooked up to that, or no?
They are. They're already hooked up. So this would be for the two new lots.
The two new lots.
Right. And the new driveway would also have to have cross easements as it kind of crosses back and forth, so each owner would have to have.
And you probably have to have some type of an agreement between the two houses,
Maintenance agreement.
maintenance agreements of some sort of on the road.
Correct.
Do you know why there were two principal uses on one lot?
We don't know. Mr. Santucci purchased the property, I believe, in the 60s. He indicates that there were already the two principal structures, and that's how it's been maintained. I believe they've been upgraded over the years. That's as much as we know. So the idea is hopefully this can help kind of correct that situation so that they each have their own lot, as they should.
We'll check. The question was, are the lots conforming, and we're going to check that in due course.
Of all the lots, yes. I mean, we tried to confirm that they were all conforming, even to the, there are steep slopes on the site. There is a provision in your code for, there's no wetlands, that didn't come into play, but there is a provision for the land sort of not with the extremely steep slopes. So these lots have been configured so that they meet those minimum requirements in addition to lot size. They all exceed the minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet. The smallest, I believe, is 30,000.
So you won't be requiring any variances at all?
We don't intend to seek any variances, no. We try to meet all that.
And could you repeat again how many trees, even if it's like a mass of you're cutting down, and how many?
Sure. So we're taking down about approximately 100 trees. We're installing 133 trees. We're proposing to install 133 trees. You can see in sort of the lighter green, it correlates also to one of the other plans. Those areas are sort of designated for either stormwater management features or lawn areas. The idea is to make sure that these new residences do have some lawn areas, just like the two existing lots have certain lawn areas. So we didn't feel it was necessarily appropriate to reforest the site when we were trying to make sure that people had both screening, stormwater measures, and still be left with some lawn areas to enjoy. In total, it's about 1,000 inches that would be removed. That would require approximately 500 to be replaced. Based on our estimates of the new trees, using what they would most typically go in from the nursery, we get to about 300 inches, so we've got a shortfall of approximately 200 inches. That we'll have to, that's what we wanted to come to the board to talk about. We didn't want to, we didn't realize, what had been the practice. It sounds like this is new territory for the board. So, we're happy to consider, different measures that we can do with those trees. They obviously all can't, the ornamentals that go up and down the driveway, those are typically smaller trees, but the idea is that they provide, some visual interest, don't overgrow the driveways. Generally, those kind of trees do have flowering, they're flowering varieties, so they provide different interest. Try to make sure that we had enough evergreens along the perimeter so that when the deciduous trees lose their leaves, there's still screening, as you can see, between the existing lots and the new lots, and then to the lots to what would be the plan right.
So Mark, on your list, are there sequoia?
There's a copy of it upstairs. I didn't think to bring it down today. Sequoia?
You know the Keith California red ones, where you can drive a car through? Probably not.
Yeah,
We can grab some.
I don't
The
know
area
about
to,
that.
the area to the left of the driveway does look like an opportunity to possibly minimize that count a little bit.
We could, some of that, and I could just quickly go to, I mean, some of that is some stormwater measures, but we can look again. I mean, we can certainly look again to see if we can, if we stagger some of the trees so that we can get, you know, some more in there and see if we can up the count a little bit. It's just that, you know, it was a significant deficit to hit with lots of trees.
And just for the sake of asking, the reason for the joined driveway and the single curb cut as opposed to the two?
Well, partly it's, we're hitting the site sort of at the most opportune location to the furthest right. This avoids conflicts with the existing driveway that's going to be maintained for the other two lots.
I'm not necessarily opposed. I'm just-
Sure. No, I mean, we looked at different options, and as you can see, in order to get up, there is, you know, is a topographically challenged site. In order to get up to that site, we do need to use that entire area. So having another driveway is, I'm not gonna say impossible, but it's very difficult and just creates a lot more site disturbance. This really does limit the site disturbance. We proposed the driveway to be 18 feet, where it's shared, so that it is sufficiently wide for pretty much two cars to get by. We proposed sort of a little cutout near the bottom. You can see it extends out to about 26 feet, so that if somebody was not comfortable, they could pull over to let the other homeowner through, or a truck. When it gets to the split, it's 14 feet wide, where it's really just one homeowner's own driveway at that point, up to their lots.
Its approach to lot 4 is probably advantageous as you approach the house and the front elevation, but it probably does increase the amount of pavement required on the site.
To be
proposed as is, as opposed to the most efficient, you know, direct path to a curb cut.
Right. Well, I mean,
I'm not necessarily opposed, but you know, we are losing, you know, site, probably adding pavement, you know, with some of the curves.
yes. Well, I mean, some of that is in order to maintain the slopes on the driveway. The more shallower slopes that we would do would require additional cut and earth movement, additional walls.
Okay.
We probably have to lower the homes to a lower elevation, which would mean more earth cut, more retaining walls. So we believe it would actually be more site disturbance to try to bring the driveways down, or try to put in two driveways or direct driveways, than to actually try to follow the topography and use that. And, you know, because of that run, I'm not sure how much more it actually creates, and whatever impervious, I think the trade-off is the cut.
I mean, you really can't come off perpendicular to Crow Dam Road. You really need that diagonal to increase the length to make the slope work.
Okay.
And you can see on the existing lot, I mean, they did a sort of that switch back. It's a similar thing, so obviously we're trying to be a little more sensitive to the site as opposed to.
I still think we could add some vegetation
Oh.
from the driveway, but we can discuss that.
And, you know, we can continue to look at, you know, how we might massage that a little bit. We hear you.
Okay.
Any other comments?
No.
Staff? Now that the planning board is using that provision of the tree protection chapter regarding this 50% replacement, it would be good for the town board to establish a tree bank fund, and maybe a dollar amount per inch of caliper or something that's, and also a tree bank area in town where trees can be planted, because you can't really use that section of the code unless
Does it function?
yeah, unless it functions.
Administratively, they could probably do it within a budget line, but that doesn't solve the problem of what to do with the proceeds. And so it means it's not functioning if the town board hasn't provided for it.
Right. So you may want to ask the town board to do that.
Do you want me to prepare a memo?
Yeah,
from
but
them?
let's do that.
Put it in
And
writing.
the applicants should be aware that once the town board gets involved with, if you chose that route,
Mhm.
you would tie up waiting for the town board to make a decision on this.
Okay, we will,
You would
we'll
prefer-
talk to our client about that
You
and,
probably prefer not to do that, if you
no.
can find a direct solution
to get the trees on site. We will take that message back to our client.
It's just unfortunate you're the test case, or one of the test cases.
You know, I know this is something that a number of towns are struggling with to kind of figure out the balance, and we'll work with it.
But if you put a 300-foot diameter
Yeah.
sequoias and David roses.
Yeah, it's on the list, by the way.
It's on the list.
Is it on the list? Then we will, we'll see if we can get one from the nursery.
I think the issue we're gonna keep running into trying to implement this is that if you're dealing with a wooded property that you're subdividing, if you leave room for a house and driveways and septics, the numbers just never gonna, this is gonna keep coming up. We're just gonna-
Well,
It reminds me why I was against it.
This was the issue that came up while we were discussing it. is,
Right, you're just sort of chasing your tail in a way as you try to fit everything in. It's, but we will, we'll talk with our client about that.
floating tree. Okay, any other issues at this point?
Not at this point.
All right, so
So
what?
I don't know, do you want to wait till next time, till you get the revised EAF to declare notice of intent to be lead agency, or do what we did on the last one?
You can declare your
Yeah.
intent.
Is there any, does the applicant have any preference? Sooner rather than later, or do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think our client would like to just continue to move this forward.
Okay.
That's
So why don't we do
fine.
the same thing as we did for last one? Can I have a resolution, motion to that?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Declaring intent to be lead agency, and upon the receipt, directing staff to circulate to interested and involved agencies.
Correct.
Well said.
There you go. What she said, okay. So, motion passes. No other actions need to be taken at this time, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So is it similar to that, to the last applicant where you'd be discussing, comments at the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, one other issue, do you want to put something in the record that
Yeah, I'll send a letter. You just want me to add it to the record that
yes.
one of the co-applicants is a client of mine. So I just wanted to advise the board of that relationship.
But not on this project.
No, yeah, I'm not working on this project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a bunch of adjournments, I assume we don't have to take any action on the adjournments. Have folks reviewed the minutes? Any comments on the minutes?
No.
No? Motion to pass?
Wait,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just didn't want to gloss over the town board had sent a letter for comments
Oh, that's
on
right.
River Knoll. I don't know if
That's the one from June today, right?
Today.
June 6th, yes.
I haven't had, it just came
I have
like
extra
late this
copies.
afternoon.
Anybody-
Well, it's going to be included in the package of written comments we give to the applicant.
Right, that's all that really has to be done.
Right.
Exactly,
We
the
just
comment
sent
period
them a-
ends on the 20th,
Right.
at this point.
Actually, probably helpful, because if the neighbors see that the issues have been covered by the town board, I'm sure they'll feel much more comfortable. Not that should stop them from coming in and commenting anyway, but just so that it's been considered by the elected officials. Do we need to do anything with the adjournments, or we just let them slide?
They're not public hearings, right?
Not, well, in
No, I
terms of this.
just wanted to be reminded that
They're still out
there.
No, we don't need to do anything with those.
Very good, okay, so, any comments on minutes? You guys?
No.
Dan, David, Kathy, anything on minutes? Okay. Now, motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
No objections to the minutes of April 18th? Any motion for the May 16th one?
No objections.
Motion, well, I need a motion.
I make a motion.
Second, anybody?
Second.
There you go, okay, and no objections, May 16th minutes are accepted. So the next meeting is June 20th. Any motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second it?
Thank you, no objections.